Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Nyliff podcast. Today we have a very special guest, someone that, we've known each other now
About
4 years, right?
Yeah.
This is Maria Filippone, a writer, director, actress,
Producer.
You know, it's amazing. One of the things when I was looking at all the credits is how so many people now are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing everything and they're doing it well. And I think you kind of come into this business thinking, I know when I was younger, you got to be one of those things. But I don't think we really think of it anymore. We're like, okay, we're going to do it all, right? Do you have any preference as far as any of those?
You know what? I think, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but as a young person, I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be a model. I wanted to do those things. And then I had to put it aside for a long time, and I didn't do anything for a long time. And where this all began for me was becoming unemployed in my 40s. And I thought, okay, maybe now I could reinvent myself or try to do something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And then I really took it very seriously to where I went to classes, educated myself, and being an actor is very tough when you don't get that experience or haven't done many live shows or presentations. And I learned that I was going to acting classes, but I'm like, no, there's something else more appealing about the storytelling.
Right.
Can I do the storytelling instead? How do I go about that? Learn about the industry, learn about stories and arcs and curves and how many, for movie scripts, as an example. What do you need in the first minute, the first 10 minutes, the first half, the second half? And so it was just a matter of evolving, and I thought, no, this I feel good about because it's administrative too. You know, when you're directing and you're organizing,
right.
That stuff I kind of like to do. And I like hanging out with actors because I love to see a scene come alive. Does not necessarily mean that I can do that, but other people can do that. And it's great to hang around those people.
It's an interesting thing as a director with acting experience and knowledge.
Yes.
Seems like you get that portrayal out of the actor. And you're an actor's director, really, I think, in a lot of ways.
You know, sometimes good actors, you just have to leave them alone. You give them a little bit of direction and
right.
What you want and what maybe what you believe your system is, and believe it or not, they come around because they understand. So you've got to give an actor time to develop his or her story as well, her backstory,
right.
And let them use their process. And everybody does have a different process, so you got to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
But other actors don't respect. Oh, why aren't you telling this one? No.
Right.
You stick at it. You've got to let the process and have faith that it gets there,
yep.
And then that's up to the director to say, hey, pull back and say this is not working out, or I've got to make a change. But
everybody has their own gifts and their own abilities,
yes.
And part of it comes down again to the writing. Like I think it was Woody Allen who said he writes, but first he creates great characters, and then he just lets them interact and talk to each other.
Yes.
And that is something that I discovered as a writer, but also as a director. If you're casting things right and you've got the talent, yeah, you give them a little nudge, but then let them go.
Let them fly.
Right.
Because I think sometimes or often they may not know where they're going, but they know. You see something that you would never imagined when you were writing something, as an actor takes it, they can take it to some other level that you didn't even imagine it could be there. And it could be slight. It could be a look. It could be a physical habit that somebody has. It could be
right.
something like that encompasses that character. Maybe that's not something that I could have given to them. I don't want to tell them what to do that, because then they're doing it because you're telling them. You want it to come organically.
Right.
And we want everything to come organically. Certain things, of course, you have to prepare, but let things fly.
And I think it's a strength as a director, and it seems like you have that strength where when somebody does something that's better than what you envisioned, to be able to not be stubborn and be like, hey, that person did something good.
Absolutely.
Go with it. And somebody else might say to you, well, I thought you wanted it that's better than what I thought. So
You know, Jerry, I like to do rehearsals. And in rehearsals, I have found the best moments because each rehearsal and when you're on film, you don't have the time and the luxury to be at a location, right? So
right,
when you're on location, it's you fly. But to be with an actor and let them go and do their thing, there have been moments that I've cried just watching them in the middle of a performance because you know that specific day triggered something in them, and it doesn't always happen on film. It happens during a rehearsal, or it happens,
yes,
and that's okay. But you get the gist of it. But I got the thing that I love to see, you know, and that pre-production part for me is really important because that's the development stage. I love that to see that happen and come to fruition. So,
right. The rehearsals are important that way, and I always tell whoever I'm working with, run those cameras during rehearsals because a lot of times you catch things. And even sitting here with you, I don't know if you felt it, but the second I put these cameras on, like you and I were talking here for 5 minutes sitting at the table.
I didn't even know they were on.
No, it wasn't on.
Oh, they
But I'm
wasn't
saying
on,
then when
yeah.
I said, okay, let's get going, and it's almost like now you're on.
Correct.
But there's a certain natural thing that just we were talking in the other room, and it's very easygoing. And sometimes you get the best things out of that when the actors are just not aware
Right.
that you're going yet.
Right.
And it's very interesting. I mean,
To that point, Nicole Kidman, I happened to see something, a little blurb yesterday. She goes, "Don't cut the scene." And what she meant as an actress was, you know, as an actor or an actress starts to do a scene and they don't feel right with it, an actor should not be able to say, to cut the scene, because they're making a prejudgment of how they're interpreting something. But what we're seeing, or what I may see, or somebody else might see, might be, oh, that's what we want.
right.
So she said, never cut the scene, of course, unless the director cuts the scene.
Yeah.
But as the actor, just keep on going. And because you can cut and interchange, but
Right.
you can see maybe a struggle there. Well, maybe the struggle is what that piece needed at that
Yes.
second. And I thought, what a great evaluation, or, you know, who would think that way?
Right.
I don't know.
And you wonder if, like in film school, do they teach that, or is it just something you learn? When, I've worked with actors and actresses that have done that exact thing, and you're like, why did you stop? You were going down, and they don't realize that, learning your lines, and when you're acting, just think about the way you talk in normal life, and there's pauses and inflections, and sometimes that forgetting of a line, you could tell they're forgetting their line, but sometimes it comes off emotionally because they're in a sweat or they're in, and it's making the scene great.
Correct.
So
Or
you're
they get
right.
an anxiety
Don't
attack
cut.
in the middle of
Exactly.
their monologue or something, and they kind of regroup. But there was a great look. That was great. We wouldn't have caught that if it was just status quo. Right?
And you hear it all the time from mainstream films. Mainstream directors will talk about stories like that, even things that have led to Academy Awards that you find out it wasn't
meant to happen a certain way.
right.
Right. It wasn't even supposed to be like that. It was supposed to be a totally different way, and that happened.
Right.
So,
Now you work with a lot of, very talented actors from, all of your films. You've worked with Michael Fideli, and of course you've worked with Vince DiCali, right?
no. I have
Okay.
not.
And Gerry, Glenn McKeever,
Yes, she's wonderful.
wonderful.
Michael's wonderful.
Teresa
too.
Cannistraci,
Yes.
Lilo Grunwald, Donna Morales, like all of these people, they're in and out of so many different productions from so many of the filmmakers on Long Island, and it seems like there's a pretty tight-knit group of people that you work with. Now, do you like working with the same people, or do you write for people, or do you come up what's your approach? Like your film Addiction and The Graveyard Medium. I know one of them, Addiction, came from a play.
Yes,
Right.
it did, and it is based off of a story that John Pasadino
Right.
wrote. prior to doing the directing on film, I worked with the Northport one act plays, and went on as an apprentice for somebody, and I thought, yeah, and then I thought I can do this, so it started that way, and I did 7 shows, 7 years with them. A couple of other people's work, I started to write myself, and I started to say, what's the sweet spot here? Everybody likes that 12-minute mark, you know. So I started to work with them, and I would meet people that way. But then sometimes I just wanted to go see a play, and then I would see somebody. But ironically, it's not like me in my younger years to go up to approach somebody and say, hey, I really dug what you did. But now I can go up and say, I really liked what you did.
Right.
Because applause sometimes just needs to be said. Like somebody I went up to, and no one's ever come up to tell me that. And I thought, well, how could that be? But that's just the way people are sometimes.
Right, right.
Sometimes people can favor, and they'll go up and say, that was a really great show, I really loved it. Sometimes it's just what to say at the moment because people say it, but to really feel it and say, I really caught something in that. It was really nice to see that. It's nice to see, you do something. So somebody that you didn't know. So I can do that, and I like to do that because it's the person that I wanted to be when I was younger.
Right.
But I couldn't do it when I was younger. I felt shyer or something.
And now you have the confidence. You have
I could go up to somebody and say, I really like that. You know what I really liked about it? XYZ, and have a conversation about it. So
right.
I like that about me too, because it kind of like freed myself up from developing relationships sometimes with people, but that's not necessarily the reason to do it. It's just to say, hey, I really liked it, compliment, I'll see you around,
Right.
Not knowing that maybe a couple years later, I remember some occasion, perhaps, an opportunity might come in later. But I do, because I'm doing shorts, I do tend to now perhaps write for certain people, with certain people in mind. It doesn't mean it happens that way,
right.
But it is some kind of, sometimes I know that performance or that I had seen, or that actor I had seen, might be really good for something that I might be working on.
Right.
But I do like to work with different people because I like to meet people and I like to understand their process, and different ensemble is nice.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's and when I try and write from a storytelling place.
Yes.
And that gets tough because, like, doing something like the Fontanas, there's a lot of people that want to come into it. I'm like, I can get that person in. Or you'll have somebody who's talented, and you're like, I'd like to get them in, but I don't necessarily have something. So now you find yourself sort of writing for that person. But I always feel, don't rush it. Like, especially with something like a series, there'll be a character. It might be 2 episodes from now, but I don't want to blow it by sticking that person into a small role, and then 2 episodes from now I'm like, oh wow, there's a wacky neighbor, he would have been perfect, but I already used him. So it does get you become like your own studio. So you're making all of these decisions at this level, which can occupy your brain 24/7.
I don't know if this has happened to you, but you see such a nice performance they have a small piece. I want that actor to have a little bit more to say. Sometimes you change it up a little bit because they are adding so much value to the piece that you say, wait a minute, I want a little more of you. I think, so that happens, and you think, I like that.
Yeah.
You don't know until you know, right?
Well, a perfect example of that is, and again, going back to the Fontana, is the Lucia Love plays Carla.
Yes.
She was just, it was going to be a one-off at the family function, and she was the girlfriend, and she was gone, but she added she was so different than the rest of the family that I was like, no, there needs to be more of that. And now she's grown in my mind and she had such great comic timing that I had never worked with her before, and I didn't know that was going to be there.
I remember on the Fontanas there was a separate scene you did towards the end of the series with her and another woman in a restaurant. So I think maybe perhaps, did you write that specifically for her?
Well, the character just grew in my mind, and it was like, so then there was the date scene.
Right.
Where, I mean, the line that's so ridiculous, but where she says that the guy says he's a widow. And she says, oh, I'm sorry. And he goes, yeah, the big C. And she goes, oh my God, she drowned? and she just perfectly delivered it. And I was like, I gotta have more of that in this.
And you gotta love that kind of character. 'Cause, oh my God, because it seems so real, right?
So real.
Oh my God, they drowned. You're like, what? But that's what makes it different,
Right?
Gerry, right? That's what makes it funny and natural, right? And
Right. And humor is so vital.
it's so, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Writing funny is hard to do, but naturally something coming out of it, it's priceless.
Right. And you know, coming from an Italian family, I always say, like, one of the things that inspired my writing was my family. I mean, right where you know. And I always say how, like, I would go to funerals as a kid, and I would always notice, you know, Uncle Tony dies, but everybody's standing next to the coffin laughing. Because you're telling stories, you're reminiscing, you do. So laughter exists in the most tragic,
Yes.
miserable places. And that's important. I feel it's very important in storytelling, between humor and romance. And we were talking off camera earlier about Rocky.
Yes.
And, you know, we could do show after show on Rocky and have actor, filmmaker come in and talk about how Stallone influenced so many people. Now, how did Stallone influence you?
Well, I first of all, it comes from the story, and watching him persevere as an individual. And I was young; we were very young, right? But even then, I understood the process of somebody still pushing and still wanting to achieve, and he wasn't going to give up. So that kind of a person attracts me. That's a natural person,
Right.
trying to be somebody, right? But then the quote, you can quote so many of his lines, you know, I don't have no locker anymore, Mick. You know, you want to be my manager, but you won't give me a locker, you know.
Right.
Oh, you've never been to my house before, huh? You know,
Does my house stink?
Does my house stink to you? You know, that kind of thing. And it stinks in here, you know, like, and his way, Cuff and Link, you know,
Right.
the humor of having these pet turtles, having no phone. Your sister's with me. You know, there's wonderful lines there.
Yep.
Paulie, Paulie's character, all of them had these little pieces that just kind of stuck with you. But Sylvester Stallone's piece and the Rocky piece, he also, his sensitivity towards his future, he thought he knew something, even talking to Marie in the night with the ball, bouncing the ball, and he's giving her lessons about life, and then she says, go, you know, whatever she says to him, and he goes, well, who the heck am I to give advice to somebody like that?
Right.
It was just really real. And then also the concept of, hey, this guy did it, maybe we can all do it, or I could write something later on in life, or at that, you know, I was young, but later on there were so many. You start to get older with them. You say, well, now I'm in my 20s.
Right.
Maybe I could write something like that. But it wasn't happening for me at that time. I was trying to do more of the modeling thing, and I didn't understand how to write a script until I discovered how to educate myself about it, right? So,
Right.
And that didn't happen for many years later. But it was just... And the way it ends, you know, and just waiting to see what happens to him. And he said, no, there's not going to be any rematch. And like he didn't give up on his dream. He just had a new one. But then falling in love, right? And
Right.
loving Adrian. And it was important to me because I have somebody to share this with. Those things.
Rocky wouldn't
that.
have been the movie it was without the Adrian romance.
Without the romance, I agree with that.
And I heard an interesting quote today from George Clooney, believe it or not. And he said, nobody really learns anything from their success. You learn from your failures. And I was like, wow, that's really just simple, but so true.
So true.
And, you know, obviously Stallone went through failure after failure. I mean, he auditioned for The Godfather and was told he wasn't Italian enough.
Okay.
I mean...
And he was, because I remember seeing The Lords of Flatbush. Do you remember the movie? I remember seeing him in there, and I remember liking his character and the engagement, and he had to go to the jewelry store and get a ring, and Stanley, I want that ring. And then he just said, you ever show her a ring like that, I'll kill you, or something like that. It was just the personalities at the time that we were seeing. So
the actor, there was him, Henry Winkler.
Henry Winkler was in that, yeah.
And I forget, there was another actor, and when he did Rocky, the studio, when they heard that it was the guy from Lords of Flatbush, the studio thought it was one of the other guys. And when Stallone showed up, they were like, we're not making a movie with this guy. Where's the other guy? And they were like, no, it's this guy.
Yes.
And it caused like a whole problem where they were going to drop the film. Henry Winkler actually had sold Rocky to ABC.
Oh, really?
Yes, and had to pull the deal back. They hadn't signed anything, but he had come to Stallone and said, ABC's interested in the film, and we got a deal. And they were going to make the deal right before the studio came along and made the deal. So it could have been like a television movie.
Do you know William Goldberg, I believe his name is? He's a writer. I think he did Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but he also did a book about Hollywood. Goldwyn, I got to get his correct name. Forgive me for that. But he said, he goes, nobody knows anything in Hollywood.
Right.
And so when you can take that, because they're all thinking that they all know something. They're not coming from any sophisticated background either. They get into it. They become producers. They think, oh, I can do a story. Let's do a story about this. I don't like this. I don't like that. Give me the reasons. Give me the meat of why something won't succeed. Well, nowadays there's so many to choose from, I would assume. But nowadays, you can make your own stuff, because what is the payoff for you? What is it that you really want? If I was a 20-year-old in my 20s, of course I'd probably want to be developing for a future career. At my age, I just love the process. I love the product.
Right.
Love to be able to show the work, be able for the actors to perhaps get other work because of what they've done in my films. That's my objective. Other than that, it's not, like my mother says, you're not making any money? I said, no, Ma.
Right.
I didn't take that trip because I needed to pay for this, whatever, for this movie. So that's the objective for me. And I guess when you have that freedom, it's just doing it, Right,
and taking again from Rocky, like you said earlier off camera, it's going the distance because you don't know.
Correct.
Look at that character. He was a bum. He was collecting money. He was,
right,
doing nothing with it. Right. And that happened. And sure, it's a movie, but you've seen that in your life. I'm sure you've met people that have gone the distance and then they get where they want to go. And Hollywood, it always does what it does. Once it starts making money, it repeats that process forever until it fails. So you're coming in now with something different. Look at, superhero movies. That's all they did. It was a period of time, it was all gangster movies, and then it was all sci-fi, in the Star Wars era. And so you have to kind of figure out what's next as a business person.
Yes.
And I know you probably wrestle like I do. We're creative people. We want to tell a story. We want to make these films.
But it is a business.
But it is a business.
Correct.
And you wrestle with that because you're going to make your next film. You're like, well, I always ask people when they come on the show, and even friends of mine, I say, what's your goal in this business? Because I think sometimes we're afraid to say, I want to make it. We go, okay, it's for fun, or I really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And that's all true. But somewhere in the back of your mind, is there a goal? Like, would you want your film to get you, the opportunity to direct? Like, what would happen if somebody came to you and said, Maria, we want you to direct this movie. It's got a $25 million budget. It's starring, I don't know, Kevin Costner and, some other actress. And,
I would go crazy for a little while, but I don't think that I have the full skills to do that, Gerry. And I would think that I would not be the right person. But I got a 9 to 5. It's really hard.
Right.
It's hard. How do you do I put something aside for somebody else, or do I take precedence over my thing, or what do I do? My time is limited.
When I wrote Bridge the Gap, which was the film that the Mutant Kings and the band came out
I
of.
didn't see it yet, and I want to see the mark. I want to see the mark.
Well, I never made Bridge the Gap into a film, but the concept of it is that these guys, they were a band, and they broke up when they were teenagers, and for the next 30 years, they hate the guy that caused the breakup.
Ah.
And part of the concept of that is it's easier to hate for 30 years because he caused the breakup, but if they did make it, would these guys, like they're all married now, they have families, have they ever really thought back and said, what would it have been like if we were rock stars and we were on the road for the last 30 years? Like, and that's one of the things that comes out later in the story is, could you handle that success?
Right.
And I think, and it's perfectly fine to just want to do this because you enjoy it and it's fun and everything, but I always find it interesting to hear everybody's different
well, you don't
objectives.
know. Sometimes, think of the Beatles. Wouldn't you want the Beatles to last forever? And
Right.
they were together for
Such a
their
short time.
childhood until they made it, and then up until, 1970?
Right.
Who would think that they'd split up and never come back together again to do a gig or...
Nothing.
Nothing. And it just leaves you, they changed the world of music. And to think that they never could because of the premature death of...
Right.
And one and John Lennon, and
But that was 1980. A decade
that's 10
really
years,
went by
nothing.
that nothing, all that talent.
But you know what? I don't think it was. I think it was just too much of the constant being new, all the music and the singing and the craziness of the live performances. They probably liked studio time. They probably liked that more, but the craziness of that time and the screaming, you couldn't even hear half of them. It's like Elvis too, right? I mean, it's the same. It's the phenomenon of this all happening. Does that wear on you? You just want to be a regular guy maybe, for a day or two. But you're not a regular guy anymore. You kind of...
Right.
Not sold your soul, but that's where you're moving towards, and you got to go with it until it changed, until they made the decision to stop. And to think that they went from those 2-3 minute songs to these great other songs that would change that early 70s rock too, and just so different.
It's an interesting point too, because it takes away some of the creativity and the talent. Like you talk about Elvis and you talk about these guys, like when you get complacent and comfortable. Jay Leno always said when he got to the Tonight Show, he kept his old desk and his old chair. They always wanted to come in and give him new stuff. He's like, I wanted to keep that ratty chair, that ratty desk that I wrote my best stuff when I was young. He didn't want to let that go.
I didn't know that. That's a nice
story. And it's interesting because, do you suffer when you get too comfortable? And I've noticed a trend with a lot of people in Hollywood that are worth a fortune. They're not leaving their kids their money.
Yes.
And at first I was reading that going, oh, the guy's got $100 million, he's not leaving this to his kids. Mm-hmm. But they're like, it's not going to do them any good. They're not going to become anything. They're not going to figure out who they are, and they're not going to pursue their talents. They're just going to...
Or they could be lying.
I'm right there with you on that. Right.
Their kids along a little bit. Hey, I'm not leaving you anything. You better get going.
Right. And then when they're dead, it's going to be like, all right, there's going to be a box that says...
joking.
Right. But conceptually...
I wish I would have something like that. That would have been really great.
But what would you be doing now if somebody left you $100 million? You'd probably be on a yacht somewhere, like, maybe... I don't know. You can't imagine it, but, like, what are Stallone's kids? Worth $500 million or whatever he's worth. What are those daughters going to do? Like Elvis's daughter could never come out of that shadow. She was actually pretty talented,
but actually she was Priscilla really raised her quietly and really out of the spotlight for as long as she could, but looking like him, the king's daughter. It's always that shadow on top of you, and unfortunately,
it's
the way
tragic.
It was so sad.
So we're very fortunate in a lot of ways, because I think the opportunity in this business... There's nobody left us anything. We're lucky to be Porsche lovers that are just...
Poor, and it's okay. Do what you want to do whenever you want to do it. It's good.
Yeah. And again, with all the talent that's out there, And I always say that it seems like we're in a transition period we may not even be aware of. Hollywood is like confused. People are against a lot of the politics have taken over. Movie theaters going to stay open. Is streaming getting tired and old? Like,
I don't
what's
know. I'm
where are we
worried.
headed?
I'm worried for movie houses because there's nothing like a movie house, and if everything starts to be streamed,
Right.
That's it's a great platform. We've gotten exposure to so many different things, but we could get bored with that too. Do you know what I mean? So
I
what's
think
the
I'm already
next
there.
thing? Yeah, I know. I don't. I mean, we have 1,000,001 channels, and we still can't find something to watch. That doesn't
Seriously,
make sense
do
to
you
me.
spend more time
Yes.
flicking through the channels than you do watching
Correct.
something?
Correct. And going to see something that you saw 20 years, 30 years before. Let me
Yes.
see that again.
Right.
Whether it's a fun, whatever type of movie, but I'll take a look again because you can't find something.
Right.
I don't want to look at something or give something time where, it just it doesn't give you anything. And I shouldn't even say that because sometimes you don't think something is good, but you might enjoy something if you do watch it. But after binge watching this and that and looking for, it's okay. I mean,
Right. So
put a
trying
ball
to
game on.
yes,
You know?
and trying to figure out the next thing that's going to happen. Again, going back to Rocky, going back to Gone with the Wind, going back to Casablanca. What movies have come out recently that it's like they're in and they're out, even the ones that win.
Yes.
We've kind of lost that ability to hold on to something. It's a cultural entity that transcends time and it's always going to be there. I don't know that I
What
see
is
that anymore.
Does it have anything to do with the movie, or does it have to do with the way we are as a civilization? Quick, immediate delivery. We need some kind of stimuli, and then okay. I think I liked Oppenheimer. A little too long for me, but it was a story that needed to be told. I love the acting, the performances, but you're right. Is that something that was it was historical. We got to learn about history, things that I didn't know about.
Right.
But it wasn't something like, oh, I want to go catch that again, or 20 years from now. I don't think that that's something that I would want to see.
Right. For those little lesser known films,
it was just such a
there was a
good
film I
movie.
watched recently, The Man Who Invented Christmas. It was about Charles Dickens.
Yes.
And it was like nothing that made any noise or anything. I read about it. It was a little inaccurate and some, but it was just an enjoyable film with good performances, and it had a good feeling where I don't know if we have the ability to do that anymore. It's like back in the 80s, like Mrs. Doubtfire was like the top blockbuster of the year.
Hello.
Right. Like, there's nothing really offensive about it. There's nothing crazy. It was just a nice movie, a nice family movie. And it's like, I feel like we're just in a state of confusion with the whole industry.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder where it's going. And that's why the film festivals are cool, but even those are changing.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, like, we need to make film festivals more open to the public, not just filmmakers. We got to get the word out there and get people to come
enjoy
to see
these other films that maybe you wouldn't see anywhere else.
Right. Now I want to show you your trailers.
Okay.
So we'll cut to those, and then we'll come back.
Okay.
All right. I'll show them both. I'll show Addiction first, and then Graveyard Medium.
Okay.
We'll pretend like we're looking at the monitor.
I'm sorry I said all of that.
I really needed to talk to you. Just want to make things right.
There was something wrong
with me.
Priscilla. That's her name.
Ew, that's impossible. I mean, how could you even know that?
I didn't, but your wife told me.
We all miss someone.
Oh, no, not again.
Whoa. That never happened to me before. She just jumped into my body, then out.
That was my Haley! Bring her back. I'm happy that I can connect for people. But you're the one I want to connect with.
We're back. Those are great. I mean, all of your films.
Thank you.
They're always, top of the line.
I appreciate
And
it.
yeah, they are. And we see that with so many of the filmmakers. Each one gets better, more interesting. And I know you sent me one of those, and then you were working on the sound.
Yes.
And it's always frustrating to see. I mean, I know we know now what all the filmmakers go through because we're also making films ourselves.
Yes.
And it's such a, I think it's the most frustrating part of it is when I look at movies, you see a movie and the two guys are driving down the road in a convertible and the sound is perfect. And I'm going, how do they do that? What? They're not looping it. They're not overdubbing. I'm sure you've done that, and it drives you crazy because people can't.
Doing films outside, which is Graveyard, was like that. I mean, you don't realize the sounds that are happening. I went 10, 15 times. Check this out. Listen to this. Do that. What am I hearing? But it was at noontime. Oh, everybody was out to lunch. I ran from my job from home. Went there, spent it. Okay, sounds pretty good.
Right.
Went on a weekend. It was nice and quiet. You do it on the middle of a week on a Tuesday and Wednesday. Every landscaper, every flight, every imaginable the cutter, the landscapers within the cemetery, they were very good. But then they started, I'm like, oh my God, please! And it's happened in every film that I've done. Cicadas, these noises. I'm like, where is this noise coming from? And I didn't identify it earlier on. I'm like, what is this? Why can't I get rid of it? It's bug noises. And
the microphones pick up everything.
And they actually the microphones like those noises. Just to piss you off. But sound mixing really needs a lot of paying attention to, because you can get great shots, but sound will destroy a lot of filmmakers' films eventually. It's just what takes the person out of the film. If you don't have
you probably saw I did that baseball documentary.
I saw, but I haven't seen the documentary.
No,
I know
but
that you did work on it.
When I did that baseball documentary, at the baseball field, there's lights all around the field, and at the top of the lights, there's nests. And when we were filming the baseball when they were playing ball, and there was hundreds of people there,
yes,
the birds were chirping.
They were
in all the nests.
And in the nests, yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Did you realize it when that was happening, or
I realized when I was there filming, but unless you
go with it.
There's nothing you can do about it. Right. And you go, okay, I know that there's probably some kind of software out there or somebody who could, but and what I did was sometimes they would get a little quiet and there was an announcer. So what I did is there were times where the announcer was talking, but the birds were so bad. So I overdubbed my voice as if I was the narrator.
Okay.
And a lot of people, when they were there, were like, "Oh, I loved how you narrated portions of this because it broke up the monotony of the one voice that was there."
Yes.
Meanwhile, one of the main reasons I did it was to get rid of those damn birds.
I get it.
So, you do things sometimes that work.
So
Look at Rocky. Rocky made so many changes to that movie because they couldn't afford it. They didn't have the ability to do what they wanted to do, and it made it better and made it part of the classic that it is.
And they are the inventors of the body cams and because there were running scenes.
Yeah.
They were stabilizers, right?
Yeah.
They developed all that, and that's in the 70s. So
Yeah.
People who do independent films. I know somebody who used a wheelchair to somebody have him pull the wheelchair so you could run around with something. But that's the things that independent filmmakers have to do. If it's a longer shot and you want it long, how do you do that? If you don't have tracking, if you don't have all of that stuff, what do? Use a good old wheelchair to kind of pull things in. So, or pull you out. But, very interesting. Things come out of special films like that and they stay a long
Did you ever read Ed Burns' book? Independent Ed.
Yes, and I actually wanted to read it again because that Millie and I are working on a feature, so I wanted to just get reread it again because it'll instill the ability to get it done because it's a different animal than the shorts that I've been doing. So. But I would, yes,
it's a good read.
Read it. It is a very good read.
Interesting because when I asked you earlier if you got the opportunity to direct something and you said, well, I don't know if I'd be able to handle it. Because if you remember in that book, after he had done Brothers McMullen, he made the next film he did was called She's the One. Because they came to him and said, well, what else do you have? And he's like, well, I got this script. And they handed him a $5 million budget. Wow. Tom Petty did the soundtrack. And he was like on cloud nine. And then when he got there, started working on it, he's going, people are coming up to me like I know what I'm doing. And I'm the same idiot who just made Brothers McMullen. And he went into like a panic. Yes. And the other thing is he then acted with Tom Hanks.
In Private Ryan.
Right.
And I heard this story that he had to get up to speed because he wasn't
Hanks came over to him. What the hell's wrong with you? You're a good actor and you suck. He's going. Yes. So, I always say, if you get that opportunity, take it.
Well, you know what?
Fool them.
They always say, surround yourself with smarter people, smarter technicians. And that's what they mean. You can, if you're given a budget, you can do the film. You just get quality here, quality there, the best as you possibly can within the budget. So, understood, but I'd still be a little nervous.
But
he went home every night.
I'd be calling you up saying,
I don't know what I'm doing,
honey.
Man, but I pulled it off today, right?
Right.
So, I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. But his story is also a success story of literally just, in those days they had film, they didn't do digital. And he got into one festival. He got into Sundance. And it was, the highlight. These three brothers and their story. And he was
rejected from Sundance twice.
Was he? For the same story and he kept on submitting it?
He submitted it and got rejected.
I didn't know
then
that.
he worked on the show Entertainment Tonight.
Okay.
He was like a stagehand on that show and they weren't allowed to talk to any of the stars. And
I remember that. Okay, go ahead.
Redford came on and he broke the rule and said, Mr. Redford, will you watch my film?
Wow.
And he just took it and said, yeah, okay, and gave it to his guys that were walking behind him. And he got rejected again. They sent another rejection letter. And he said for some reason, right after he got that rejection letter, they got called. We're putting your film in.
Wow.
And he said, I was sitting in the audience next to Dustin Hoffman and my film won. Like that. I just don't see that happening anymore. And that's a sad byproduct of, it's like television. There used to be 7 channels. Now there's 800, so there's more opportunity. But is it really more opportunity? Right. Back then there was a handful of festivals. Yes, you couldn't get into festivals, but if you did, would a festival like that look at your film because nobody else was?
Correct.
Now everybody's making a film. This thing can make a great film, so there's a lot of festivals, but...
And international films are they get grants from their countries to 100,000, 2,000. You've given a budget on behalf of the country, or you could probably get budgets for your states as well. I know that they do that, but foreign films can get budgets
Right.
pretty easily, and especially if you have a little bit of a name, yeah, they'll give you $100,000. Go with it,
Right.
It's
You can do a lot with that.
It's a lot of better than what I'm working with.
And I think the Hollywood budgets are so overinflated.
Oh, please.
Probably at least half of it is BS
Yes, I believe
figures.
so. I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Did you ever see the video with Ed Burns when he did a really nice movie? And I don't know if that's the one that you were making reference to, but it was a restaurant scene, and it was really about them just marriage and talking and things like that. And he said, we did it for $3,000. I got insurance, and I had my camera, and everybody did it for free. And he says, but we did it for $3,000. Insurance and whatever was the necessary things. Well, of course, once you go into editing, and then it was digital, I believe, advertising costs money, so it wasn't only the 3,000. But initially, yes,
Right.
I mean, they got it done. He got a bunch of people who would do it, and they were good caliber actors and actresses, and okay.
yeah.
But
And-
you got to know those people too. I mean, you have to know that you can do it. You have that at the time. Not many of us can leave our work for a month at a time, or whatever the time frame may be, but,
Right.
And
again, I mean, I used to look at it and say, is how badly do you want it? If you want it, if you're staying where you are, it means you're happy where you are to a degree. When I was younger, I wasn't willing to put in, you read Dustin Hoffman, Charles Grodin, these guys went to Manhattan. They lived in cockroach-infested
Yes.
apartments. They auditioned
Yes.
every single day.
Yes.
I wasn't willing to do that. I had a girlfriend and a nice job, and I was going to school, and
I want to be clean.
yeah, I want.
You got to have a certain type of personality.
Yes.
To really just say, I'm going to forego everything. And you don't know what success will meet you on the other side, or years. You don't know.
Right. We're actually in a better place than we realize. And I think sometimes I realize it. We are creating stuff. We're confident. Like, you're able to now go after what you want, approach people that you want. I feel like there's a bend around the corner that's still coming, that's going to open doors for this industry. And I have a thing that's hanging on my wall in the other room that came again from the play Bridge the Gap. And it was a quote that, these guys later in life, they're playing their music and they finally make it. And one of them says, dreams don't always happen when you want them to. They happen when they're supposed
To happen. That's right.
And I kind of live by that. And it's true. Like, time is relative to today, really. If you make it, quote, make it tomorrow, that's where you are. All of the stuff that you went through to get there is just part of the story and part of the journey. You're not going to sit there and go, well, I was miserable 20 years ago.
Right.
You're going to go, this is it.
Yes.
This is when it was supposed to happen.
I remember May 9th in 1994. Oh, God, that was a horrible day, right? You just,
No.
The timing is everything. And sometimes you got to take risks and chances, even if you're scared, or and even do things. Sometimes things don't come out the way you anticipated, but if you could feel that you're in the game,
Right.
that you tried, you made your best effort, and because it's on a smaller version, you could do it again if you had to. It doesn't
Right.
mean that you can't go back and do scenes, because you're in control. So that's really what's great about creating your own piece of your own pie.
Right.
Because you can do that.
Yep.
You don't have to listen to anybody as far as, you can't do this, you can't do it. Oh, yes, you can. You can do what you want to do.
Right.
And it's okay. And if it fails, the failure's on me too. But if it's
Right.
good, the benefit is on me and or us or whatever. So
The word can't almost has no place in your mind. Like, there's no reason to say it. even though you know something's difficult,
Right.
if you start thinking, I can't do that, just don't even say it. I try and force the word out of my brain, and say, well, let me figure out a way, or figure out a way around it.
Right.
One of my favorite metaphors in my mind that I use all the time for this business, and I've always taken the words of Disney, which was, keep moving forward. But in Indiana Jones, and I believe it was The Last Crusade, when he comes to that ravine and he's got to get to the other side. I don't know if you remember that scene.
Yes.
And there's nothing he can do but take the leap of faith. And he just puts his foot out. There's no bridge.
And there's nothing there. That one is my favorite.
And he hits that step, and it's like when you look on the
like,
side now, you can see it.
And then you put the sand on it, and
Right.
it's like right there, and it's like it's waiting for you.
Yes.
It's waiting for you.
That's how you have to approach this business. And that's how you have to
Great
approach
analogy.
every project you start. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to take that step because that bridge is going to be there.
Excellent.
So,
Love that. Yeah, you're right. That was a good movie. I love that.
yes.
That's my favorite one from that genre and that.
Now, I've flip-flopped a little bit, even though I didn't love the second one at the time, mostly because Kim Cattrall was kind of annoying.
Okay.
But I like the second Indiana Jones movie a lot more than I used to. It's a lot of great action, a lot of great... It's almost like a James Bond movie. And I think that's what Spielberg was looking for. If you remember in the beginning, he's in the white suit, and he blows up the blimp and the whole bit. And it's very fun movie.
There's a couple of them. Like it's like you were talking, revisiting something.
Yes.
Sometimes you think that something's going to be a certain way and it doesn't pay off in your memory, but wait a minute, because maybe you just didn't go as a spectator and just enjoyed what was offered.
Right.
Because you put a notion in your mind, well, this one was like this, well, why is this not like that? Don't think it.
Right.
I worked with a writer. He was one of my teachers, and I worked with him for about 2 years in a group too. And I have a feature that one day I would like to produce. And he said, I still have the ability to go and sit in a movie house and look at it totally objectively. Like not think like, well, what did he do that for? Why is that light there like that? Or why did he say that? Or, that's going on too long.
Right.
He really just said, I look at it just as if it was brand new and I was a kid eating my popcorn. Yep. And if you do that, then you're just open, right? You're not closed in to think, oh, I'm in 2 minutes. I mean, there's been a couple things that I'm like 2 minutes, I'm like, I can't do it anymore. But,
right.
But for the most part, give it a try, because there are some things that are like, that's interesting. Why didn't I get it the first time? Maybe it was me, I didn't get the concept in the beginning.
Right.
Perhaps reviewing it and understanding what the meaning was about something. I'm like, okay, I'm looking at it with new ears, new eyes.
That's what I always tell the judges when we're watching films with Nyliff.
Yeah.
Don't think like a filmmaker. Don't think like an actor. Don't think I'm here to critique.
Correct.
Pretend you're going into a movie theater and this is what you're watching, and
Absolutely.
you're there just to have a good time.
Absolutely.
The things that are wrong will jump out at you. The things that... But just accept it for what it is. And, yes, the word judge is such a, whether you're prejudging, don't prejudge. Well, judging is just as bad, really, when you think about it. I'm looking at what you did, and I'm giving it an evaluation.
Correct.
Who really is qualified to do that? Really, it's the court of public opinion that's going to decide. If your film is well received,
right,
it means people like it.
Right.
So judging, what's it really worth? It's like, I remember growing up and going, I don't like Madonna. This music's terrible. But half the world made her a big star.
Absolutely.
So was I wrong? Is there wrong? It's just a matter of preference. That's really what it all boils down to.
And you don't know what resonates with people, because at the end, I think we really just want to be really good storytellers and try to get that onto the medium of film, right? So
yes.
So that's the objective. So
right.
If somebody says, I really love that, I remember somebody had come up to me and said, oh, there's things to help people with that now. Like, well, this is not a real story, ma'am.
Right.
Well, no, but there's things. And I'm like, well, no, this is not real. But she was like adamant, and she said, I really liked it, and I've been in a similar position because it affected them in a certain way, and they wanted to share that, and they felt, that hit me. And I'm sure that there's millions and millions of times where that has happened to us independently, and we don't share it with anybody. We just you don't go and like write a note to somebody. I just want to let you know I really like this scene. It doesn't happen. So sometimes you do it and you leave it for the world to just wherever it falls, right? You can propel it to a certain degree, but the rest of it is perhaps you never know.
And you're right. At the end of the day, this is about telling a story.
Right.
I don't care about what camera you use. I don't care about what equipment you have. What we're using in a lot of ways is better than what they made The Godfather with. It's like what it's in a recording studio is better than what Elvis recorded on. It's about the music. It's about the story. It's that at the end of the day is what I think we need to get back to. I think it's one of the things that's kind of ruining things a little bit is we've lost the art of storytelling because the business has changed. Like we were saying earlier, it's a business, but that's taking over now. It's like they always say, like with a story, you got to grab the audience in the beginning. So, and that's true. A lot of film festivals, they won't watch past the first minute. If you get your script read by somebody in the industry, they're only going to read those first few pages.
Yes.
Well, what does that do? It's causing us to front load with the best material. And a lot of films go downhill. Well, that's no big surprise.
There are a lot of sleeper type movies, and I shouldn't say sleeper type. There are quieter films that really pay off about the psyche of what I think it was In the Bedroom, and it was something about their son was murdered, and it was just so quiet,
Yep.
and they were scheming on how to kill the person who killed their son, but you could see what lengths they went to. That's psychologically interesting to me, right? So to somebody else, perhaps not, but I would think that there's many people who take on a story like that and they say, "Oh, that's really interesting." Yeah, it's really slow, but it wasn't unbearable.
Right.
It was just unfolding a little bit different.
We've lost the foreplay of movie making.
Correct. Let's just get on with it. All right, done. Yeah, that's a Jerry Seinfeld. Remember his Kramer?
Yes.
I'm out. Left Kramer alone for 5 minutes by himself. He's no good. So.
Master of your domain.
Yes.
We are the masters of our domain. That's how. Let's end this show as the masters of our domain.
Yes.
And moving forward, we've got a lot to look forward to. And this is a great interview.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me on. I really just
Yes.
enjoyed talking to you and getting to know
Me
you a
too.
little bit more. So thanks again.
We'll do it again.
Yes, I'd like to.
All right.
All right.
Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next Nyliff podcast.